In the new birthday party documentary, Mutiny in Heaven, Roland Howard speaks briefly about the type of rock and roll that feels dangerous. He cites a line of police separating a crowd from a performance by the Doors. This image is indicative of an atmosphere, certainly something that the birthday party cultivated during their notorious live shows. In the same breath, Mick Harvey has spoken about this and is emphatic that the spell is broken once the line is crossed and violence occurs. The birthday party were at their best when the tension remained unbroken. Like in a horror film, the build-up is what's most important. It's now Thursday, and on Tuesday night I witnessed a performance by the Jonestown Massacre at the Forum Theatre in Melbourne. And after 17 years of going to live music, it is probably the only time that I've ever experienced rock and roll. And I mean this in the most evil, primal sense of rock and roll. It was like seeing the Stooges in 1973, or the Jesus and Mary Chain in 1984, or the Sex Pistols' final show at Winterland in 1978. Little bit of context. The Jonestown Massacre are an American psychedelic rock band formed in San Francisco in the early 90s, led and lorded over by one Anton Newcomb. They have been no strangers to displays of bizarre rock and roll excess and aggravation, all of which is well documented in the 2004 cult documentary Dig. The Australian tour began on November 11 and was plagued with reports of lengthy onstage arguments, ranting, and a general lack of focus. The whole thing fell apart on Tuesday, just 10 days later. The 3 remaining concerts were cancelled. I arrived early to secure a position on the barrier, and I was going by myself because I'm a cool guy. I got talking to the person next to me, and she said that she'd seen the Jonestown Massacre every time they'd come to Melbourne, which is probably about 5 times. I asked her if the kind of things that we'd been hearing from the tour so far were normal, and she said, well, yes and no. That most of the time she'd seen them, they'd been absolutely incredible. But the last time she saw them, which was in 2018 at this very same venue, were the first signs where the wheels were starting to fall off. She said that she was really excited for me to see the Jonestown Massacre for the first time, and we'd just have to see what happened. And then the show started. Anton appeared in the pit between the stage and the audience and was giving all the photographers, of which there were many, and the security guards, of which there were not enough, a little cuddle before the show, which was kind of strange. I've never seen that happen before, but I guess it was a nice moment. The band emerged a few minutes later and began not with music, but with a lengthy monologue in which Anton recounted being mugged at knife point the night before, reminding us that he cannot be stopped by knives or indeed by anything at all. The point being that he had lost his voice while trying to defend himself, so had nothing to give to us tonight, but nonetheless he was going to give us everything. I suppose a bit of context is important when you are a singer and your voice is not exactly up to scratch, so I suppose that makes sense. The band then kicked in with a pretty good rendition of Number One Lucky Kitty off their Fire Doesn't Grow on Trees record, but it was clear that Anton was not happy with the performance from drummer Dan Lyons. The next several minutes were very much akin to the not quite my tempo sequences from Whiplash, and it was so intense. He just kept going for this guy, song after song. It went for 20 to 30 minutes of him just really getting into this drummer. It was just wild. From this point, the air in the room just changed, and all I could do was watch the band and audience mutually unravel. I feel like I spent pretty much the whole concert in fight or flight. I've never really felt anything like it at a gig before. It was simultaneously thrilling, exciting, frightening, sad, all of these things all at once. It was just so bizarre. There were frequent, heated, expletive-laden confrontations between audience and band and audience. Things were thrown. Anton was issuing threats and also calling for peace, but then threatening violence. It was wild. Projectiles were thrown at the band and then at the crowd. The band members walked off and then walked on again, then walked off. And all the while, I think we heard maybe 9 songs in about 2 hours of stage time. The whole situation was hurtling towards oblivion, which finally came in a physical altercation between guitarist Ryan Van Creed, who was dismissed by Anton moments before. Van Creed shoved past Newcomb to try and get off the stage, but then Anton smashed him in the head with his guitar. Newcomb then fled across the stage, and the two just tumbled down in this fist fight, and they knocked over the poor percussionist Shay Roberts, who just fell through the drum kit and the keyboards. It was insane. The regular tambourine man, Joel Guillen, who's been with the band since the early 90s, had already left the tour days earlier, which was perhaps an indication of what was to come. This has clearly been brewing for some time. Security scrambled to part the combatants as the rest of the stage cleared, and Anton was just left sitting by himself on his amp as all the lights were starting to come on and the security curtain closed in front of him. It was an absurdly cinematic moment. The fact that this climax was so bizarre and cinematic had many people thinking that the whole shebang was faked. For my money, though, this was the real deal. You would need the best actors in the world to sustain this kind of tension over such a long time that was so detailed and so lived in, that all these micro moments between the band members, things happening in the background, it was certainly not staged. There's, of course, been a lot of discourse around this. People who reckon, oh, you know, this is a Brian Jonestown Massacre show. This is what you pay for. You should expect this kind of behavior, which I certainly don't agree with. And then a lot of people who are also, you know, demanding refunds and things like that, which I can understand. But for the most part, we got a 2-hour show. There was not as much music as we expected, but it was certainly a spectacle, and I've never seen the like of it on a stage before. At the end of the day, it really is just a sad situation. And I think mental illness and exhaustion, perhaps, overwork, I'm not sure, is really the root cause of it. But there's going to certainly need to be a lot of support given to all these people if this band is ever going to find a good place. I would not be surprised if this was the last we saw of this iteration of the band, and they frequently do change the lineup of the touring act. I think Anton is a pretty difficult person to work with, so certainly I would not be surprised if the next time we see the Brian Jonestown Massacre, if we do again, that it is with a whole new group of players. It brings to mind the famous 1998 altercation on stage between Marquis Smith of The Fall and several of his other band members, who essentially got into a punch-up, and then he was thrown in jail and they left him in New York, and then he just got a whole new band and kept on going. Marquis Smith and Anton Newcombe, I think, certainly two figures cut from the same cloth. I'm honestly still reeling from this show. Like I said, I've never seen anything like it. And I would certainly never advocate for violence or abuse at a show or anywhere, but I will never forget this performance, and it was, for better and mostly worse, it was rock and roll, and I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about it. I certainly won't be forgetting it in a hurry. If you were there, I hope you're okay. What was it like for you? Thanks for watching. This was a bit of a rambly one, but I just felt compelled to make it. I haven't done anything for a while, but I'll be back hopefully soon in a more extended format. Going to be talking about the birthday party in celebration of their new documentary, Mutiny in Heaven, which I mentioned before. And yes, I hope the rest of the year goes well for you. Cheers, take care. Mwah.